St. Louis has always been a hub for entrepreneurs and innovators, from it being a bustling center of river trade, to Anheuser-Busch, to Purina, and so much more. Women were not excluded from this. St. Louis saw many different women who excelled in their career or business. Together, let's take a look at 3 St. Louis women who were excellent examples of this. Elizabeth Keckley was a nationally recognized seamstress who ended up designing and sewing dresses for Mary Todd Lincoln, President Lincoln's wife, while she was still in the White House. Keckley was born into slavery in Virginia and was sold to a family that moved here to St. Louis. That family hired out Keckley as a seamstress to St. Louis elite so they could make extra money. She was later able to buy her and her son's freedom with the help of her clientele in St. Louis. She later moved to Washington, D.C., where she made dresses for D.C. political elite. She later wrote a book of her experience titled Behind the Scenes, or 30 Years a Slave and 4 Years in the White House. I just told you a little bit about the story of Elizabeth Keckley, and one of the ways we share information and tell stories in the museum is through artifacts or objects that relate. I'm going to share with you several artifacts, and it will be your task to pick which artifact you would put in the exhibit to help tell her story. You can also go to our collection search and pick your own object that you would use. Now, I do want to note that not all of these artifacts may have belonged to the exact person, but represent something they would have used or seen during their time and would help represent their story. So if you do a collection search, you may not find something that belonged to that person, but would still help tell their story. So one item you could pick is this engraved portrait of Keckley. This portrait was used in her book. Another artifact is the emancipation deed for Elizabeth Keckley and her son George. This gave her and her son their freedom. The last artifact is this image of Mary Todd Lincoln. I am unsure of who made the dress she is wearing, but this picture does show us an example of the kind of dresses Keckley would have been making. So go ahead, pause now, and discuss which artifact you want to pick to tell Elizabeth Keckley's story. You can pick from these 3 or go to our website and use our collection search to pick your own. Think about why you chose the artifact you did. How does that artifact tell her story? What parts of the story might it not tell, or that people still might have questions about? So go ahead and pause now. Another innovator was Marguerite Martin. Marguerite was an accomplished journalist with the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. She started off as an illustrator, but started writing as well. In this time, many journalists, especially women, did not receive credit for their work, but Marguerite always got a byline. She covered many events and famous people and became a local celebrity. Her work helps us understand more about life here in St. Louis during the early 20th century. Just like before, we are going to look at various artifacts, and it will be up to you to pick which one you would use to tell her story. You can pick from the ones I presented, or use the collection search at our website to find your own. Here is a newspaper article and sketch from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch by Marguerite Martin. This article is covering women's suffrage or women fighting for the right to vote. Here is a photo of the Post-Dispatch building. This is where Marguerite would have worked. This artifact is an example of a press pass used to get into an event. This one is blank, and Marguerite Martin might not even have gone to this specific event, but this press pass is an example of what press passes at the time would have looked like and what she might have used. So go ahead, pause now, and discuss which artifact you want to pick, or look up your own to tell her story. Again, think about why you chose that artifact. How does that artifact tell her story, and what parts of the story might it not tell, or that people might still have questions about? The final entrepreneur is Annie Malone. Annie Malone moved to St. Louis in 1902 to continue growing her small business. And by 1918, she was a multimillionaire and employed over 75,000 women across the globe. Malone started a beauty and hair product company called Poro. As her business grew, she opened up Poro College, a training and distribution center, which became a community center. She was also a philanthropist and helped fund an orphanage, which to this day still holds her name in her honor. Once again, we are going to look at various artifacts, and it will be up to you to pick one to tell her story. You can pick from the ones I presented or use the collection to find your own. Here is a picture of Poro College. Poro College was more than just a headquarters for her business, but became a community center in the Ville. It had hotel rooms, a cafeteria, and even an auditorium that could hold up to 500 people. Here we see an image of Poro products. These beauty products helped make Annie Malone one of the richest women in the world at that time. This is a pin celebrating 85 years of the orphanage that Annie Malone helped fund. It's now named Annie Malone's Children's Home. This pin is from 1973, but it still exists to this day and still serves St. Louis children. So pause now and discuss which artifact you want to pick or look up your own to tell Annie Malone's story. Think about why you chose the artifact you did, how does that artifact tell her story, and what parts it might not tell or might people still have questions about. Thank you so much for learning with me about these women, entrepreneurs, and innovators of St. Louis. Check out the other gallery stops talking about St. Louis founding women and women activists, as well as our other Homeschool Day activities and crafts. Share with us any thoughts or questions you have by tagging us on social media and using the hashtag MHSLearn. And remember, keep making history.